packed onto the flight deck of the USS Hornet. Engines are warming up, and they're about to attempt something that has never been done before. And honestly, will never be done again. The USS Hornet, CV-8, she was in service for exactly 1 year and 6 days. And in that 1 year and 6 days, she did two things that changed the course of the Pacific War in World War II. This is episode 2 of The Carriers of Midway. Long before the B-25s and the Pacific Ocean, let's go back. We're going to actually go way back. The Navy launches a new sloop of war. She's fast, she's maneuverable, and she's built to fight above her weight class for sure. They name her the Hornet. The War of 1812, she was the first U.S. Navy ship to capture a British privateer. February 1813, off the coast of Guyana, she engages a British brig called HMS Peacock. And I want you to really let this sink in for just a minute. The Hornet only loses one man, just one. The Peacock, well, the Peacock sinks. Her captain is killed. 19 of her crew go down with the ship. The Hornet, well, she fished the rest out of the water, and then she sails home. But here's the thing. She wasn't done. March 1815. The war, it's actually technically over, but nobody got the memo. Yet, the Hornet captures the HMS Penguin off a tiny island in the South Atlantic called Tristan da Cunha. Then, about a month later, she mistakes a British frigate, the HMS Cornwallis, for a merchant ship. Well, that was a bad mistake. And to escape, her crew throws everything overboard. Boats, guns, equipment, anything basically not bolted down goes into the ocean so she can outrun the ship that outguns her 3 times to 1. Well, she survived it all. Battle after battle after battle. And then on September 10th, 1829, the Gulf of Mexico, off Tampico, a storm hits. The Hornet, she vanishes with all hands lost, never seen again. And that's the name that got passed down to CV-8. So here we are. We fast forward about 135 years. The United States is building aircraft carriers now. They're called the Yorktown class, named after a famous American battle. The other ships, the Enterprise and the Yorktown. And this third ship in the class, CV-8, they don't name her after a battle. They name her Hornet. She's commissioned October 20th, 1941. She's 827 feet long. About 90 aircraft is what she can hold, 34 knots at full steam. And there's the timeline that I need you to understand. She was commissioned October 20th. Pearl Harbor? Well, Pearl Harbor happens on December 7th. She has been in service for about 7 weeks, and suddenly she's one of the most important ships in the United States Navy. Less than 2 months old, and someone has an absolutely insane idea. So now it's early 1942. The country is reeling from Pearl Harbor. The Navy needs a way, any way, to strike back. And a captain named Francis Lowe, he's looking at a photograph of an Army bomber taking off from a naval air station. And he notices something, I guess you would say, odd. The outline of the runway. It honestly kind of looks like a carrier deck. And the thought that hits him is genuinely insane for the time. What if we put Army bombers on a carrier? What if we launched them at Japan? Well, now let's be honest about what they're working with. The B-25 Mitchell was never, ever designed to fly off a ship. It was an Army bomber. It was heavy. It was big, and it needed a runway. And even if you could get it airborne, here's the other problem. It couldn't land back on the carrier. It did not have a tailhook, no arresting gear. So where were they supposed to go? The plan, and I'm not kidding, was to launch within about 650 miles of Japan, bomb Tokyo and other targets, then keep flying west and hope friendly forces in China find you. That was literally the plan. Hope. 16 B-25s, 80 volunteers, led by Lieutenant Colonel Jimmy Doolittle. He's a test pilot, an aeronautical engineer. He held a PhD from MIT. He's actually one of the most famous aviators in America. Doolittle wasn't just commanding the raid, he was flying the first plane off the deck. The Hornet, well, she sailed from San Francisco under total secrecy. Her own crew actually doesn't know what they're carrying. They see these Army bombers sitting on the deck and they're just like, what exactly are we doing here? Then the deck crew paints white lines showing exactly how much runway each pilot gets. They strip the planes of everything they don't need. On the morning of April 18th, they're about 170 miles farther from Japan than they wanted to be when a Japanese Pickett boat spots them. They have no choice at this point. They have to launch early, knowing that they almost certainly won't have enough fuel to reach safety, or they could abort the mission entirely. Doolittle, he goes first. The Hornet's deck is pitching. The bow is rising and falling in heavy seas. His B 25 wings barely clearing the carrier's island structure, the structure in the middle that has all of the main people in it, and it just lifts off. One by one, all 16 get airborne. It's a miracle. They bomb Tokyo, Osaka, Nagoya, and Kobe. The physical damage, honestly, at this point, it's not massive, but the psychological impact this had on both sides, that's really what mattered in this raid. Japan, after bombing Pearl Harbor, now realizes their home islands are not invulnerable to attack. And America has its first victory after Pearl Harbor. Now, here's where it really kind of gets interesting. The Hornet's crew just pulled off one of the most audacious missions in naval history. And they had about 6 weeks before they'd be asked to do something even harder than this. And just real quick, if you're enjoying these stories, hit subscribe. It really helps the channel. And we've got two more carriers to cover in this series. Okay, all right, back to the Pacific. Okay, so we fast forward to June 4th, 1942, the Battle of Midway. Now, here's where Hornet's story takes kind of a complicated turn. The Yorktown, as we covered last week in this episode right here, well, she was a comeback story. Three impossible things that the Yorktown did. The Hornet at Midway? Well, this is a different kind of story. Hornet's air group commander is a man named Stanhope Ring. And on the morning of June 4th, Ring, well, he leads dive bombers and fighters on a heading that never finds the Japanese fleet. Now, historians literally call it the flight to nowhere. To this day, it's controversial. The Hornet's captain, Mark Mitchler, filed reports after the battle that some people actually believe were deliberately misleading. But here's the part that really nobody talks about. One squadron commander looks at his fuel gauge, looks at the heading Ring has ordered, and decides he knows better. This would be Lieutenant Commander John Waldron, Torpedo Squadron 8. Waldron breaks radio silence and he tells Ring, "You're going the wrong way." And then, against direct orders, he turns his 15 TBD Devastators directly towards the Japanese fleet. Waldron had no fighter escort, no dive bomber squad, just 15 planes with 15 torpedoes flying into the teeth of 4 Japanese carriers protected by dozens and dozens of Zero fighters. As you can probably imagine, all 15 planes get shot down. 29 of 30 crewmen were killed. There was one survivor, Ensign George Gay. His plane, his plane was hit, but he managed to get out, and he floated in the water, clinging to a rubber seat cushion, watching the rest of the battle unfold around him. He was there in the water as the dive bombers came screaming down. He watched as 3 Japanese carriers burn, and he had the best seat in the house. Here's the thing that really matters, though. Tactically, Torpedo 8 failed. Not a single torpedo hit, but their sacrifice and the sacrifice of the other torpedo squadrons that attacked that morning, well, they pulled the Japanese combat air patrol down to sea level. The Zeros, well, they were chasing Devastators at wave top height, and this opened the door from Wade McCluskey's dive bombers from the Enterprise, which arrived about 10:20 a.m. and looked down. The Japanese carriers, they were completely exposed. The flight decks were full of bombs at this point. Fuel lines were everywhere. In 6 minutes, three carriers were burning. Torpedo 8 didn't sink a single ship, but they opened the door for the dive bombers that did. Waldron's 15 planes and their sacrifice, they bought 6 minutes of time. And 6 minutes, well, 6 minutes was all that took. As we get back to the Hornet survived Midway, but she had about 4 months left to live. October 26th, 1942, the Battle of Santa Cruz Islands. Japanese planes find Hornet in coordinated waves, bombs, torpedoes, and here's the detail that really gets me. Two damaged Japanese dive bombers deliberately crash into her, and one hits the island, and the other hits the flight deck. Fires, well, they're raging. She's dead in the water. The cruiser USS Northampton tries to tow her. They actually get a line attached and start pulling. But then another wave of Japanese planes arrives. Another torpedo hits. The tow line, well, it had to be cut. Japanese destroyers close in. They finish her with torpedoes. And on October 27th, 1942, the Hornet sinks. She'd been in service for 1 year and 6 days. She was the last U.S. fleet carrier ever sunk by an enemy fire. And for 77 years, she sat alone in the bottom of the South Pacific, 5,300 meters down, nearly 17,500 feet. That was until 2019, when the research vessel Petrel found her, sitting upright on the ocean floor, remarkably preserved, still recognizable after all of those decades. A silent monument to a ship that packed more history into just over a year than most carriers see in a lifetime. What's really cool is the name Hornet didn't end there. There's an Essex class Hornet, CV-12, that served through the rest of World War II, through Vietnam, and recovered the Apollo 11 and the Apollo 12 astronauts. But that one is for a story for another time. And the 1805 Hornet, the sloop that vanished in a storm with all hands, she and CV-8 share something. They both fought beyond anyone thought they could, and neither one came home. Well, that's episode 2 of Carriers of Midway. Next time, we're going to talk about the Enterprise, the carrier that fought from Pearl Harbor to Tokyo Bay and never stopped, the Big E. And if you've enjoyed this episode, hit subscribe for more untold stories. And as always, I want to thank you for watching Archives and Anchovies. And I wish you a great day, a pleasant evening, and a wonderful week ahead. Thank you.